for an eight-minute
They're
hearing.
going to DVR it.
We all set, Mr. Corcoran?
I am all set.
Okay, let's call to order our first and only hearing of the evening. This is the August 20, 2015 meeting of the Board of Appeals at 7:30. This hearing is on the application of Judith O'Neill Hart, the owner of the premises, and Seaport Dental of Milton, the lessee of the premises. The application is dated July 21, 2015, and the applicants are seeking a special permit from the terms of the Milton bylaw so as to be permitted to operate a dental office at the existing structure located at 588 Randolph Avenue in Milton. This building is a non-conforming pre-existing use, and it's in the Residence C district. Formerly, this building was utilized on a lease basis as a real estate office. The zoning bylaw requires that new uses within a pre-existing non-conforming building occur only if authorized by a special permit of the Board of Appeals. My name is John Leonard. I'm Chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me tonight, to my immediate right, is Board Member Nicholas Gray. To my immediate left is Board Member Ted Daber. The rules of the Board are such: we'll hear from the applicant, then we'll hear from any person present who has questions of the applicant. We'll hear from people who want to speak in support of the application, and people who wish to speak, if any, in opposition to the application. We're tape recording the proceeding this evening. Even though we're on television, the official record of the proceeding is the tape recording and not the TV broadcast. So we'd ask that before anyone speaks, speak up nice and clear and loud. Tell us your name and address, so we'll be able to identify anybody if we have to revert to the tape in order to prepare a decision. In addition to the advertisement, which I've just summarized, we have the application. It's dated July blank 2015, filed by Attorney Edward J. Corcoran on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Corcoran's business address is 1266 Furnace Brook Parkway in Quincy, Massachusetts, but Mr. Corcoran is a resident of the town of Milton. Not that that's required, but it's always an interesting fact. The applicant has filed with us a plot plan of land showing the subject property. It's by the Neponset Valley Survey Associates of Quincy, Massachusetts. It's dated October 30, 2013. And we also have a set of plans. Patterson Dental of Monona Heights, Minnesota. So it's very interesting. Filed apparently by Dr. Lisa Rooney. Her name is on the plans. The sheets 1A1, which basically is a plan showing the subject property with the various operatories and how the applicant would build out the property if the special permit is granted. Mr. Corcoran, I think, has filed the next two documents. One is basically it's a site plan showing where the subject property is in relation to Randolph Avenue and Reedsdale Road, and it shows the other uses and the size of the various other properties that are proximate to the subject property. And we also have an aerial photograph which kind of morphs the plot plan showing photographically what the buildings look like in this area. So we thank Mr. Corcoran and the applicant for filing all of these wonderful materials for the board prior to the hearing. And Mr. Corcoran, are you ready to proceed? Oh, I'm sorry, we also have the denial letter. Thank you, Ted. Because it's a special permit, we have a letter from Joseph Prondak dated July 20th, 2015. It's to Mr. Corcoran, basically telling him what we put in the advertisement, that since it is a residency district and it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, to use this as a dental office requires a special permit by the Board of Appeals. So we thank Mr. Prondak for his kind letter of July 20, 2015, and we'll have that as part of the record. So without further ado, Mr. Corcoran, welcome back to the Board of Appeals. We're delighted to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm joined by Frank O'Neill, who is here on behalf of his cousin, Judith O'Neill Hart, who is the owner of the property. Ms. Hart had some knee surgery recently, so is not able to be here herself. And Chris Rooney, who is married to Lisa Rooney, and they are the owners of Seaport Dental of Milton, LLC, which is the tenant at the property. This is a property
And we
that's-
hope Ms. O'Neill is doing well
we-
from her surgery.
She is recovering. She went to she had a knee replacement on Tuesday and went to rehab today. Thank you.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, we wish you the best.
Thank you very much. I will see you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Corcoran, to interrupt you.
That's quite all right. So, about 6 weeks ago, the parties entered into a lease of the premises, the office portion of the premises located at the corner of Reedsdale and Randolph Avenue. A condition of that lease is that the board grant a special permit for the dental office use that's been contemplated pursuant to that lease. This is an interesting property. It is a pre-existing, non-conforming set of uses that go back quite a ways. One half of the property is leased to Tedeschi Food Shops under a lease that is dated November 29, 1983. That lease has been extended a couple of times, and it has at least 5 years remaining currently. Tedeschi is now being sold to 7-Eleven, so the ownership of that, the entity that will operate there for the next number of years will be 7-Eleven as opposed to Tedeschi, but it has been for a number of years a convenience store. The other half of the property that is the subject of this application has been variously since 1948 at least, a retail grocery store and drugstore, a art gallery and professional office, leased in 1988, a retail clothing store for a lease dated 2008 and a special permit granted there too, and a special permit granted most recently in October of 2011 to Thomas O'Neill to operate the premises as a real estate office, as Success Real Estate. So historically, as the uses have changed, the new tenants and the owner have been back before the board seeking relief. So one half of the building, you can see it on the aerial that I provided. This is taken from the town's GIS website. The frontage on Randolph Avenue, the front door to Tedeschi's enters straight from Randolph Avenue. There's a large unpaved parking area just to the south. This property takes up approximately half of the building, and the entryway is on the corner, right opposite the the light. And that property has most recently, as I said, been a real estate office. It would now become a dental office with 5 dental bays inside, as depicted on the proposed interior layout sheet. This was prepared by an interior designer, a dental office designer with whom the Rooneys have done work.
Is this a conceptual plan, or is it a definitive plan?
It's interior, it's fairly, I don't know, you can
We
answer.
actually approved the final plan yesterday. That's probably 90%.
Okay, does it differ?
We just moved a couple rooms around for convenience type, more than anything.
There's no,
The exterior is going to stay the same?
The exterior?
Yes, sir. You may put up a sign or an awning,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you're not going to materially change the
Maybe-
outside of the building? Okay. Thank you.
no, and so all of the work is really being done inside the building. In addition to the larger parking area, and I'm sorry I didn't provide a more close-up, but there's an area of parking you can enter onto from Reedsdale Road that has parking for 3 or 4 cars. There is a set of boulders that sort of separates one parking area from the other, but it's a fairly large combination of parking spaces that are available. They're underutilized. The aerial today depicts substantially what you see if you go there at any time of day in terms of parking. So we think there is more than adequate parking, including some number of parking spaces that are available on street.
There are no designated parking spaces for this particular use? It's parking in common? Okay.
That's right.
And no number of spaces that's designated in the lease.
That's right.
Is there, excuse me, do you know whether there's any number designated in the Tedeschi's lease, or?
There's not.
Oh, okay.
And speaking with Ms. Hart, there is some discussion about after the 7-Eleven takeover is complete, doing some sort of more formal parking arrangement for the property, but it's not something she's been interested in doing today. She's just, the plan right now is to use the parking as it has been, and there's been more than an adequate supply, as we understand it, historically. I did speak with one abutter, Brian Walsh, who is the town moderator, is an abutter. He did indicate his own potential conflict in that he is your appointing authority. But he made clear to me that neighbors wouldn't have a concern with this type of use. He didn't expect there to be any opposition. He promised that he would call me if there was any issue or concern. I have not heard from him. But out of, just to reach out and to make sure that he and his neighbors were aware, I did reach out and make that, have that communication.
Where does Mr. Walsh live?
He lives on Pleasant Street. I forget the number, Pleasant, but...
Is he proximate to this, or is
Yes,
he
he is
down the street?
he is an abutter. He is not a direct abutter, but he is an abutter. He's within the zone of friendship, I guess, in terms of legal notice. And so, I think what we're really saying is that we have a new use, which is going to continue to maintain the vitality of this building and this property in this area. It is a use that it's not inconsistent with uses that have previously existed in the property. The combination of those uses will remain in place for some period of time, and so I would suggest that this new use will not substantially increase any detrimental or injurious effect of the building or use in the neighborhood, and that the dental office will result essentially in a beneficial reuse of the office space, generate a modest amount of new tax revenue to the town, and will, and based on that, I would recommend a request that the board grant its approval. Open the board to questions the board may have at this time.
Sure. Could you tell us a little more about the nature of the dental business? Is this a general dentistry, or is it a specialized practice? How many dentists? I'll give you 4 or 5 questions, and you can answer them all.
It will be mostly general, but we do have 2 specialists that work for us.
Okay.
So we have 4 total doctors working for us.
That's what I wanted to know. 4 dentists?
Yeah.
Are they all dentists?
Yeah.
Okay. And what are the specialties of the 2 other?
So 2 of those are general dentists, and one's an endodontist, which does root canals, and the other one's a periodontist.
Covering the waterfront. All right. And how many dental assistants would be employed there? Approximately.
Starting out probably 1, and then at its maximum, probably 3.
And then office staff, do you have a couple of people or one person?
Yeah, 1
Is
or
this-
2 people total.
And how about general hours of operation? Standard?
Yeah, well, although,
Not 5 o'clock in the morning, but...
no, at the earliest 7, at the latest 7, I would say.
Okay. Weekends? What are you doing on weekends?
Probably Saturdays for 4 hours, probably late morning to early afternoon.
And closed on Sundays?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, the only emergency.
Unless there's an
purposes-
emergency, of course, yeah. Could you very briefly describe what improvements you're going to make to the exterior of the facade? Are you going to put up a sign there, or?
Yeah, we'll have to work, I'll have to get advice from Ned on the signage issue. It's brick. What I'd like to do is clean up the brick. There is some graffiti on the Reed Steel side that I'll have to clean up. Probably there is on the back, there's paint, it's painted, we'll probably repaint that. Probably new windows in the same existing space where there are windows now. And that's just about it. Probably in the new, we have to have a vestibule to walk in, open the door, walk in, and then open another door to get in, just so during the winter it's not. So we want to do that. So it's the front of the face of the building might change a little bit as far as where the door is. That's just about it.
Do you need approval of the selectmen for the signs
We'll need an approval of the sign committee and/or the selectmen if we have to do that. There is a sign bylaw in place that is being under reconsideration for the coming town meeting. So there are rules and regulations as to what size, backlighting, if any, et cetera, but we'll have to comply with with the sign requirements.
Okay, let me see if my colleagues have any questions. Mr. Gray, do you have any questions?
I think you addressed the issues I was thinking
All
about.
right, Mr. Deba.
How many square feet is the space? Do you have a, roughly? Not ex-
1790, I want to say.
I think that's about right.
790 square feet?
17.
17. I was going to say 790, sounded awfully small for...
Yeah, we had a point cloud done, and I think it came out to 1790.
That's right.
Thank you.
And could you just indicate, is this a long-term lease? Is it a 5-year lease
Yeah,
plus?
I mean, we're spending almost $1 million on the property, so,
Really?
yeah, we're gonna, the
Lease-
lease we have is about 20.
Lease is 10
10
years with
25.
2 5-year renewals and an option to, and a right of first refusal to purchase. Not an option to purchase, but a right of first refusal.
Right of first refusal and not a right of first offer?
Correct. No, it is a right of first refusal. If there's an interest in selling, they have to offer it to sale.
That's good. I have 2 right of first offer cases presently being litigated. So I'm glad you're not doing a right of first offer. They're very dangerous things. Okay, now I suppose most of your build-out, the $1 million build-out you're talking about is...
Don't quote me on that, but it's gonna be close to
Well,
that.
sure. Well, it has to be doing a lot of specialty electronics and water and all of
Yeah.
the sophisticated systems you need to operate a modern dental office. And could I just ask one question out of superabundance of caution here? Dr.
Rooney?
Rooney, is that your sister or is that your wife?
My wife.
Okay. Are you going to be employed by the business or do you work
I
outside?
run the business side. We have a current practice in Boston, and I run sort of the business side of the practices.
Okay, so this is going to be a satellite office or just is this going to be a main office?
She's gonna work at both. I don't know, what do you mean by satellite?
Well, you could have a main office in Boston, but see people in the suburbs.
Oh, it's gonna be a second office. I don't
This
know
is-
how
okay,
what
sec-
adjective you would put on it, but it's,
All right.
yeah.
And how many years has Dr. Roney been practicing dentistry?
2000 she graduated, so 15 years.
Okay, that's great. That's terrific. Any more questions? Like, Ted? No?
I have none.
Okay, let me, Mr. Corcoran, have you finished your presentation?
I have, thank you.
Anything you want to add as a result of the pertinent questions of the board?
No, they're all very good questions. I'll leave it to the board to see if there are other comments and ask the board to.
Good.
Just one
Yeah,
question,
sure.
so we can put it in there. Do you have any, I know that, because I've parked there, there are no line spaces and it is unpaved. I mean, does anybody have a sense of how many cars fit in that lot, just roughly, or?
There's 6 shown on the aerial. I think you've got to be able to put another dozen.
Yeah, I would say
anyway.
20-ish.
I think you can
And
put
that's-
easily.
In the larger part of it, and then like 4 in
There's
the,
4 in the
Well,
area,
to be
3
honest
in
with
the
you,
area directly
the
behind the
backside on the
building.
Reedsdale side, the property is actually a lot bigger on the Reedsdale side than those 4, where those 4 cars
That's
are.
correct, there's
It goes all the way back to that house there.
there's a
And there's a
landscaped
curb cut up,
area
yeah.
that it appears as though it does abut the Driscoll house, but it's associated with the 588
It's
property.
in here.
Isn't there street parking along that side
There
as
is
well,
street
or is there not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my estimate, I don't know the exact, but I'd say 25, 30 spaces currently.
Really?
off,
On and off site?
No, I would say off-street, 30.
Really?
Off
30
street.
off-street?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that surprises.
That was,
If you took into consideration the Reedsdale side that we're talking about, easily.
the area that's along Randolph was formerly a gas station. That took up quite a bit of space, and so that's just all now unpaved, but leveled and gravelled.
Okay, thank you.
I've been associated with the various leases and tenants at the property, and there's never been a parking issue with the tenants, and to the best of my knowledge.
And nobody's complained to the Board of Appeals from the Tedeschi operation. We've had no complaints. And I assume, Ned, correct me if I'm wrong, that if you did need additional parking because of the spectacular success of the Rooney Dental office here, that you could easily put additional parking on the space. You could just grub out this and...
Plenty of room to do that.
Great. So let me see if there's any interested person or citizen who has any questions of the applicant or Mr. Corcoran, and the record indicates there's no such person. Is there anybody who wishes to speak either in support or in opposition to this application? Yes. Why don't you...
I should identify myself, but I'm Frank O'Neill, 46 Columbine Road, Milton. I do not have an interest in the property, however, I've been associated with the property through Judy and her father for a long period of time. And I've seen a lot of tenants there, and I think one of the highest and best use for this property would be a dental office, and I would support the Rooney's application 100%.
Great. Thank you very much for coming and providing your testimony in support of the application. Is anybody else who wishes to be heard? And there's no such person present. So unless you have anything further, Mr. Corcoran, we'll end the evidence portion of the hearing, and we'll open this hearing up for discussion. Under the open meeting law, we're obliged to conduct a discussion of the merits of the application in open session and vote on it, and we intend to do that here and now. So, Mr. Daber, do you want to be heard first?
Yes, the presentation was great and to the point and hit all the important issues as far as I'm concerned. And I, having heard it and asked the questions and gotten good answers, I'm satisfied that this change in use wouldn't, in accordance with the standards, substantially increase any detrimental or injurious effect of the building or use in the neighborhood. It would probably be an enhancement. And my one question really was with the parking, although eyeballing it as many times as I have, as you indicated, I've never seen that lot anywhere near full, but I just wanted to ask the question. So I would be inclined to vote in favor of granting the special permit.
Okay, Mr. Gray.
I also would be in favor of voting to grant the application. I think, you know, Ted's points about the parking were my main concern, but obviously there appears to be certainly enough space on the lot to support the practice. I think it's would be a great asset to the town and to the community to have a dental lab, a dental office on that space. So without any opposition from the neighborhood, I don't see any reason not to approve it. Okay,
well, I agree with my colleagues. I think Mr. Corcoran's done a wonderful job making this presentation. He supplied us with all of the documents that we need. It certainly seems to me that the history of the rather colorful use of this property, the various uses over the years, but they've all been high-quality uses, and there have been the art gallery was interesting. The retail clothing store I thought would be a success. It wasn't, I guess. But there certainly is a higher and better use of the property, and it's a sophisticated use of the property, as indicated by the fact that you're going to have two general dentists, an endodontist, and a periodontist there. I don't know any local dental offices that have that variety of specialists that are working in the office as opposed to being affiliated with the office in some loose
We don't
sense.
want to ship out any business.
Good for you, and you're making a substantial commitment. You have a Boston office now, and this is, I think this is a terrific use of the property. I think at least on 3 of the corners of that rather busy square, we have a church. We have the palliative care
The hospice.
hospice that has recently opened, I believe it has. but it's a wonderful use of the property rather than some big block condominium building that somebody was trying to put there. And this is equally very important and sophisticated use of the property. So I think this is great. It's a long-term commitment. It's certainly great for the owners of the property to have this type of a tenant in there for a long term. And so I'm delighted to, this doesn't propose any detriment to the community. If anything, this is a tremendous benefit to the community. So we should be cheering this particular lease and different use of the property, and I certainly do. So all those in favor, let me just mention from my perspective here, I asked a lot of technical questions just to bring the facts out so we have them at the hearing, but from my perspective here, we've never had any complaint from any use of this property in, I hate to say it, but it looks like it's 70 years or something. It's certainly beyond us. So I think I would propose granting the special permit, but without getting involved in a lot of conditions. We don't have a parking issue. I got into the hours of operation, but I don't think we should get involved in putting hours of operation into the special permit. I don't think it's needed. If the hours are 5 in the morning, then somebody's going to complain, and we can always deal with the issue. But I don't think it's prudent for us to be micromanaging this business. I think we should be pleased that they're making this type of investment. So I think I would just propose voting a straight special permit. As you probably know, a special permit can be varied from time to time if there are issues. We see that a lot on restaurants, and whether the parking is adequate for the restaurants, or whether the valet system is going to work, and that type of thing. And usually the people work that out on their own. So my view of this is that we vote a straight special permit, leave the signs to the selectmen and Mr. Corcoran, leave the parking as it is. There's no indication there's any issue there. And the hours of operation is outlined here, certainly it seems to be typical for the type of operation that we have here. So everyone agree with that? Okay, so all in favor of granting the special permit, please say aye.
Aye.
Well, congratulations on your special permit. As well, I'll leave to Mr. Corcoran to tell you about the 20-day appeal period. Even though nobody's appeared here, there's technically a 20-day appeal period before the special permit can be issued. But you certainly, you or your contractor can certainly contact Mr. Prondak. He has a lot of discretion here in terms of allowing demolition to take place, which is, you don't require that under a special permit. So he can coordinate with you and your contractors as to what's permissible, what isn't permissible, and where to park your contractors and all of that stuff. We leave that to Joe and his discretion, and Mr. Corcoran will record your special permit, so your lease will be, and this use will be a valid use. So, with all of that, congratulations on your lease and your special permit. And thank you all for coming today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
So, without any further business to come before this body, we are adjourned.